Okay, so let's start with a topic that's kind of been big here for the last couple months, Gen X.
Sure.
Something that everyone's talking about. You were in a closed-door meeting with Chemours and public officials. The governor has now requested $2.5 million for testing. What are your thoughts on that request?
Well, that's a state issue. That'll be up to the state legislature, and so they'll have to take a look at that and see what's appropriate. I can tell you that when I met with Chemours back June 21st, they came in and visited with me. It was a relatively new phenomenon at that point in time, recent news, and the counties, were requesting that they stop discharge of Gen X, and we talked about that, and they agreed to stop the discharge. And in fact, they told me, they said, we're going to start taking these steps the very next day. So they have, I think, pursued that end. And my understanding is now that the level of Gen X in the water is far below the 140 parts per trillion that the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services has recommended in terms of a safe level. But I think there's a lot to be determined in terms of unregulated contaminants, as they call it, as a whole. Last Congress, we voted on a bill which I supported to expand the EPA's authority to take a closer look at toxic chemicals in particular. And I know that the EPA, the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, certainly are continuing to monitor this. Also, obviously, you have the involvement of the U.S. Attorney's Office, as well as the North Carolina Attorney General are investigating it as well. So if in fact there was any violation of their permitting agreement, obviously they received a permit to just to function as a business. Every manufacturing business has to get permits because you have certain rules and regulations in place and laws in place that you have to abide by. So we'll see how all this plays out, but I am pleased that they did discontinue any further discharge into the river, and we'll just see where the science leads us.
So what do you think does need to be done moving forward about these kinds of issues?
Well, first of all, I think there needs to be a lot more science, a lot more research in the area. The one thing that I don't think many people have thought about, but it has occurred to me, one person's wastewater is the next person's drinking water, and I'm talking about all of us. Your shampoos, your soaps, hair dyes, everything that goes down the drain. If you're on a public water system, public sewer system, all that is the next person's drinking water. And so that's a little jarring, I think, for folks when you recognize that that's the reality. So you have hundreds, if not thousands, of different compounds that are in the water at a very minute, level. The question is, which ones are toxic, which ones are not, and at what level of toxicity, is harmful to human health long term. And that's, I think, an open question that's going to continue to require a lot of research. And the only way you're going to eliminate all contaminants completely at any level in the water, obviously, is if you're not shampooing your hair, not washing, not using your household cleaners and all those things that we dump into the drain, and you have no manufacturing whatsoever. Now, obviously, that's not a reasonable solution. So you have to find, a good medium point, and that's just going to require a lot of research and a lot of testing and a lot of time, quite frankly.
Yeah. Where do you think the funding should come from for that kind of thing?
Well, the state has every ability and authority to do whatever they feel is necessary as it relates to the drinking water, as it relates to Gen X in particular. There's nothing in federal statute, there's nothing in state law, in fact, that prohibits them from addressing the issue any way they want to. Obviously, the state's having hearings. I noted that the Environmental Review Commission, which I used to chair, was here in town yesterday. Taking a look at this, and that's their role, that's their job, and it's predominantly a state issue. Obviously, they look to the EPA and the Centers for Disease Control for some guidance, and I know the EPA is taking a strong look at it.
All right, so let's talk about economy and beach-free nourishment in our area. What are things that you're working on in Washington for us here?
Well, we continue to work on getting the beach-free nourishment, funding for our inlets and waterways. The beaches that are federally authorized, those are the ones that we're focused on. We've continued to work to help Carolina Beach and Curie Beach in that area, as well as Wrightsville Beach. Wrightsville Beach has a cap issue that we're working on.